All right, we should be coming up now. Give it just a second to even itself out. Let me go ahead and give a wave back in the chat. So, welcome to episode 0 of my yet unnamed, but probably will be something Eve Prosper, something show about the Eve market. I am your host, Lockefox. You can find me on Twitter at HlibIndustry. And I also help co-host the Hydrostatic podcast with Ashtarothi and Phyridian of Aderon Robotics. Let me just go ahead, since this is the very first show. We're going to talk about, I just want to talk about real quick what the goals of the show are. I want to be able to provide a show for people that really digs into the market meta side of Eve. It's extremely time consuming to try and do a news show about Eve because things are just changing so fast, and there's always been a demand for a market show out there. I believe, like, I have so many friends who've said, well, I'd love to know week to week what's going on. Like, why isn't there a Jim Cramer of Eve to help tell me, oh, Trit's up and Technetium's down and all that kind of thing. The problem is that that kind of show is extremely time consuming if you don't have the tools. So another main goal of this show is to build the tools to be able to present the data, and so I can go do the analysis required for this show in as little time as possible. My time is extremely tight with my job, and if I end up having a very busy week, it would be really easy to cancel a show if it takes 20 hours worth of work to keep up to date. So the main thing enabling this is tools. And I'll post a link in my blog after the show with all the show notes to the code. So if you want to run this analysis or see how the hot dogs are made, you can go ahead and check that out. The last sort of goal here is through data drive home sort of a general health meta of Eve, because it's so easy to watch tools like Eve Offline or even sometimes the Killboard and only sort of get part of the picture. A lot of people like to get really hyperbolic about Eve is dying, and that gets extremely obnoxious. And I sort of wanted to provide counterpoint with data to say, well, no, actually, it's this. Or, yes, actually, subscriptions are up and market stuff is up, so things are going well. Or everything is down and you should, what you should do. In the long term, I'd also like to turn this into an actually useful speculative project. I have been not historically good at market speculation, but have recently being able to get at the tools, I feel like I have a lot more. I can work at my style of money making, which is being able to work broadly. So that's sort of the goals, all the fluff, as it were. So if you guys have ideas, feel free to send them to me through email or Twitter or direct message on Twitch, on the blog. All the stuff to contact me should be at the bottom of the stream. And again, this will go up on YouTube as well, so that people who can't catch the stream at this US-centric time zone can follow up afterwards. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and get started on the news. These first few shows, the news, I'm going to have to chunk out the news that we've seen over the last few weeks into a couple of shows. But we'll get through all of it by the time Phoebe launches. And then by the time Phoebe launches, we'll have more new stuff for the next launch. And that should help keep this news segment brief but interesting. I want to start with the Phoebe jump changes because that has been the biggest topic in everything. If you've been on Reddit, if you've been on the forums, it has been the biggest topic, and most of the heat has finally died down from that. But the long and short of it is the ranges on capitals are getting much nerfed, and they're adding also jump fatigue, which will make it harder to do consecutive jumps. For those, I'm sure everyone is familiar, but I'll go ahead and recite it for posterity. The way that capital projection has worked historically is that you could traverse Eve if you had the Sinos reasonably quickly. You could do it in an hour or so. Faster if you made sure you had dock points along the way. And this meant that, especially for the little guys trying to get into capitals, that things like PL are like the boogeyman, where you don't want to undock your caps because all of a suddenly PL will show up and you will lose your everything. And this isn't particularly good in the long term. It means the big guys get to play the big guys, and then the little guys never ever get any leverage or traction. So the jump fatigue, as it was originally proposed, was outrageous. It was this exponential thing that you could totally lock out a character for months if you played it right. But it looks like we're going to go to something that will only lock you out for a few days at the maximum, and will have an exponential cutoff so that it doesn't go completely insane. The other thing that was changed was the jump freighters are going to miss a lot of the nerf, and instead of having only 5 light years range, that's going to go out to 10 light years. I know the people I was flying with were particularly just prepared to accept 5 light years, but we also live in low sec, so it's not that hard to live with 5 light years. If you're trying to supply VFK or some of the other fringes of null sec, 5 light years for jump freighter travel becomes kind of prohibitive. So that's thankfully being ironed out. The effects I expect to see, I was thinking we would see higher prices for moon materials, but I haven't seen that in the data yet, and we'll go over moon materials near the end of the show. I was also expecting mostly POS fuel to become hoarded so that people could basically fuel up their towers for an extended period of time, but that really hasn't shown up, so I'm completely wrong there. And the last speculation I've been hearing is that people are going to liquidate their capitals and their super capitals, but I really think that's not going to plunge the price of capitals. It's going to be more like a shell game where someone's like, I didn't want that super carrier anyway, and it just moves over to someone else in the alliance. Like, the general number of carriers, dreads, and supers out there per organization, I think, are going to stay relatively flat. Moving on, in protest to the Phoebe jump changes, Uedama has been a hot spot for freighter ganking. Goonswarm and Code have been in Uedama ganking freighters like there's no tomorrow, like it's burned Jita. And in result, Red Frog has raised their prices, especially for contracts that cross through Uedama. So the effects here that we would see is that we're already seeing one effect, that freight prices are going up, but I don't expect that to have a huge impact. Only in so much that though Dixie might see some pushes up. Again, I don't have data to back this up yet. I can't do diffs quite yet, but I have the data. The thing I would actually expect to see is sort of a pent-up supply from Galleente space. So things like low-end minerals and some production might be staying pent up in Galleente space, where there's not really enough demand to get rid of it, and that when the ganking stops, a lot of that will flood across back to Jita and drive prices down. This is the same effect we've seen in Burn Jita, and I did a big Mitani.com article about it. And that's sort of the effect I expect to see. And I hope to, by the end of November, be able to prove that. So we will see as we go along. The last point I really want to touch on in depth, in any sort of depth right now, is this anomalous materials anomalous materials dev blog, where the empires are buying up so-called blue loot from wormhole space, and it was really great. We had I gotta look up his name because I'm going to say it wrong. I want to say it's Ravas. Yes, we had Ravas on the show on Tuesday on Hydrostatic Cast talking about wormholes, and he was talking about how a lot of the lore implications of this, and the most interesting one I want to bring up to everyone is, if you've missed it, first you should go see Interstellar Privateer's blog, because there's a great post, They're Lying to You, going over a lot of the lore behind it and the history of a lot of the wormhole backstory, player stuff, which a lot of it I didn't even know about beforehand, and sort of a player driven secondary outcome to the event. So the event, if you participate straight, is just go deliver data libraries and neural network analyzers to special agents in each of the empires, and those will be accrued for a certain number of points, and the empire with the most points will get some shiny new tech released early for them. The wormhole community is rallying behind Guillaume Renard, saying that, well, if capsuleers are such a threat, we should collect all of that blue loot in under one player, and go ahead and beat the empires to the punch. So there's a link on the forums. I'll put it in the show notes. Go ahead and check it out. It's a really cool, neat little project, and I kind of want to throw some contracts at him. CCP hasn't committed to anything anything big about it, like if he manages to get more than anybody else, what will that actually mean? He's promised to return it if CCP does nothing. So I think it's a cool little project, and you should totally participate. I'm a big fan. The effects we expect to see on the market for this are again, a huge buy demand for sleeper data libraries and neural network analyzers. I didn't see them spike in my volume reports, and I forgot to pull them manually. So I'll pull that up on the next week's show. I'll have a whole special section for expected things that I can go show graphs for. And then the other thing we should be expecting is a glut of T3 exploration materials to be coming out of wormholes because of day trippers. I would expect a lot of the T3 prices to start coming down as the price of production comes down. That may take a little while to wash out because T3 production is kind of a pain in the butt outside of wormhole space. But I'm hoping that the supply numbers start driving things down. The things I wasn't able to cover here, and I'll be covering on a future show, are the meta module rebalance, which I have a whole slew of graphs for. It's been interesting to see them spike up on the volume charts. Invention and reverse engineering changes that were announced. Again, won't be going into them this show. The new multi-cell feature, which I know a lot of traders are excited about, won't be on this show. And then Eve is starting a third-party developer blog where they actually showcase API updates and SDE rollouts and that kind of thing. And I'm really excited to see that, but I don't want to link it until it actually moves over to the proper server. So those are all to be talked about probably next week or the week after. All right, so now the part you all tuned in for. I got graphs, so many graphs. Ta-da, graphs. Wrong graph. Plex. Let's talk about Plex. So, again, all of these graphs are going to be available for the public. You can go check them out. The presentation will be shared, and you can speculate to your heart's content. So what I have here is the top graph is the candlestick. It's sort of a hacked candlestick using the crest data, and we see that Plex is on another rise up over 800. I won't speculate as to how long it will stay up there, but I don't think that its rise is done yet. The volumes have tapered off, which is somewhat interesting. I would hope that that we might start seeing a sale around Phoebe, perhaps. I honestly have no information about it. But I think we're heading upwards, and we're going to keep heading upwards. I don't know where we're going to top out, but that's Plex. Moving on, I've got pretty screenshots, so we'll talk about outlier analysis. Now, I've been putting together these tools to help automate the process of finding things worth talking about. So right now, the only filter I have is volumes, and I'll explain it after the show how I filter on volumes. But I only really have the crest data to go off of right now, and I really only have the volumes to help filter out what is worth looking at and what are the other 99% of things that you guys don't care about. So I've picked out a few things out of the analysis. Again, everything that flags will be on there, so there's more to look at than just what I cover here. So go check out the blog tomorrow and check it out. So first, we're going to talk about the Corax. The prices have been reasonably flat, and the volume has been way down. It's kind of interesting to see something fall out of favor, but the signals, according to this graph, according to the bottom graph, tell me that there's a pretty strong upward trend. Now, again, take these with a grain of salt. Tuning that bottom graph for Eve data is difficult, and we'll talk about that after the show. the I would if I were the speculating man and really wanted to sort of play the buy and hold and sell game, I'd be looking at Corax as sort of a small thing to play with. The next one, which is kind of funny to see, is shield boost amplifiers. It sure looks like somebody bought out the entire frickin' market, and the price is going completely bonkers. Unfortunately, I think you've missed the wave on this one. So I'm just going to highlight it just to show that yes, I can see these, and they're kind of fun to pick out. I can't see them coming, unfortunately. So there's that. At least not yet. The next one is the only one out of the group of new, out of the meta changes that I'm really going to cover. It's the upgraded coprocessor, and it's only because it's the first one in the list I saw. It also has the widest variance in price of the ones that flagged. And it's interesting to see that when the blog launched, we see these big spikes in demand as somebody buys out everything, and then the price falls back down again. Again, when it comes to this speculation stuff, I kind of think the boat's already left. But it's interesting to be able to see it and talk about it after the fact. I'm hoping to put together a whole presentation on what the market is doing to those new meta modules, but I may have to wait until Phoebe launches and we actually see new metas come up through the kill boards. Another interesting one I flagged, only because I think it has a strong buy signal, is the Imperial Navy Acolyte. Volumes have been kind of anemic, but the Amar drones are a potent little surprise in PvP. I know that most people still only use the Galleente and the Minotaur drones for that hits the hardest or has the highest speed sort of trade-off, but the Amar drones are surprisingly powerful, and the faction variants have a bunch more hit points. So I expect this to climb up a bit. I don't know when that's going to stop. It may have already bottomed out, and I might be completely wrong. So feel free to write me angry letters if I lose you a bunch of ISK. Also, it's worth noting that the volumes are pretty low on this, so I wouldn't put a ton of money into it. A one that I found interesting that flagged was the small anti-EM screen reinforcer Tech 2 rig. You sort of they've been sort of coming into more vogue as they've become more popular over the last few days. I don't know if this is because there's a new meta out in nullsec. I don't know if all of a sudden that's the new flavor of the month for small ships. All I know is that the buy signal is pretty strong and the volumes are climbing up. If I was a producer for rigs, I'd definitely be putting these in my build list. Next, the only Tech 3 thing that flagged in my analysis was the Tengu Offensive Magnetic Infusion Basin. This I find interesting because rail Tengus? I honestly don't know. But especially since the wormhole announcement, the prices should be going down. The fact that they're going up and the volume of demand is going up is extremely interesting. The volume demanded has almost doubled since the start of October, and it's weird to see. If you have the ability to build them or sell them, I'd sell them. I think there's a lot of money to be made like right now. But I expect after this weekend for it to collapse back down again and maybe do some more of this spiking, waving action that it's doing right now. I was going to bring up Inferno Fury light missiles, a couple of other Tech 2 missiles, Tech 2 thermal missiles also flagged in the analysis. And it just looks like somebody was trying to speculate by buying out the whole thing and then selling off the backstock. And I've never ever seen that done to the point where makes a ton of money. Oh, and before we go off, One Man Wolfpack is pointing out that that Black Legion is now running in rail Tengus. So I guess it is a thing. It's the new meta. You should go make some money, make hay while the sun shines, right, guys? So the interesting thing here is that somebody bought out a ton of stock to try and reset the price, but it's not a stable spot. So the price is probably going to overcompensate down. I would buy and wait for the correction back up to the about 100-isk mark. Hawks. Now this one's an interesting one. They've been in decline, and I think most of this decline has to do with the cost of materials coming down. We'll see some of those Morphites taking a huge dump. But the volumes have been steadily growing over August and into October. So if you're a Tech 2 producer, this is a thing I would start looking at for production. We see that this median projection line is starting to turn up a little bit. I would think that we're going towards something that's worth producing. I still have a hard time advocating hardcore trade because I have yet to become fabulously wealthy off of just trading things. But we should see the prices start to eke up. The margins should stay pretty healthy. This would be a good spot if you're a producer. This one I found interesting. Capacitor flux coil 2s have been stable for a very long time. And their volume has been very stable for a very long time. And then the dev blog about changes came out, and all of a sudden they're really hot. So you're a little late to the party if you start now, but you're coming up on a pretty strong buy signal like this weekend. So this would be a cool place to start speculating. I will be keeping an eye on this on my manual thing, and we'll come revisit this in a couple of weeks to see if I was right or if I'm a total jerk. Both small and medium transverse bulkheads had flagged, and I only highlighted the small one right now because they are extremely popular in faction warfare for derp ships. We changed over in Aderon in Galleente warfare our derp ships from armor Atrons to hull Atrons and hull, we call them battleists, for their catalysts that are hull tanked. And the great thing about hull tanking is that Galleente ships get extra hull. You get automatic tanking for cheap with a damage control, and it's extremely cheap to do a hull tank. So you can throw thousands of these things at a problem, and even if you lose the numbers war, it's really easy to win the ISK war. As you can see, a lot of the speculations sort of played out already, but I sort of expect to see as we head into the fall and winter, as we head into the peak play season for the game, I sort of expect these derp ships to become far more popular, especially if they keep the change that trial accounts can join faction warfare. And again, medium transverse bulkheads. I would build the medium ones if I was in the rig market. This would be a strong enough signal for me. I'd have to double check that it was actually profitable. I don't have the means to do that right this second, but it's on the to-do list. All right, with the outlier analysis done, and it looks like I'm right on time, which is great. We're going to talk about sort of the breadbasket stuff. So I've gone ahead and picked out minerals and fuel components and moon materials as sort of the breadbasket to tell us about the EVE market. If you have other things you'd want me to add onto this forced checklist, then I'd be happy to hear them. I'm hesitant to do. I'm really hesitant to do PI because there's a lot of products and doing the interplay between them is going to be obnoxious. But that's where we are today. So let's talk about minerals. Oops. So the story that we've been seeing since Creus is that titanium's on the low ends are on the rise and high ends are on the fall. And that's really the trend we're going to keep seeing. I'm going to gloss over most of these, but I did want to talk about a couple of high ends. So we see Pyrite is leveling off. So with Trit rising and Pyrite leveling out, we should see things, big ships should start to stabilize in price. Mech Salon is still on a huge rise, so I'd expect things like freighters to be to start eating a lot of that price. I don't know what else takes a ton of Mech Salon, or where Mech Salon accounts for a large percentage of the build cost, but Mech Salon's on the rise. It's probably going to level off this weekend, but I don't see how it stops climbing. Isogen has leveled off and has started falling, which is interesting to see. I don't know what could be causing the supply to finally reach equilibrium and top out. When it comes to the low ends, since the refining change, I think we're seeing a lot less actual raw material hit the market. And compressed ore is going to be another report that I have to build a tool for. And that means that there's less volume in general to talk about. And we'll see how that ends up working out. I'm kind of interested to see that Isogen has leveled out and is going back down again. And then as we head towards the high ends, Noxium is on the decline. I think the equilibrium is being pushed down by more players coming back. You kind of see how during August the price would climb even though demand stayed reasonably flat. I think that's because a lot of people end up taking off that September-August time frame. And as they come back, as they get into school or work stops being a total pain and their families are at school or whatever their lives come back to normal, we start seeing a lot more of the grindy topics come back into vogue. So I think Noxium is that tipping over is really showing that the number of miners coming back into the game has crested a point. So between Noxium and Isogen, those are the two I'd say. Zydrine, I never know what to say about Zydrine. Nobody seems to care about it because it's not the top end. I don't have anything really important to say other than its level, but it's not in very high demand. And Megasite has been on a downward plunge, and I think is going to continue going on a downward plunge. This is as nullsec and wormhole producers are going to end up with a lot of oversupply of these high-end minerals, and they're going to export them, and they're not that large volume to value wise. So I expect this to keep falling because we're going to keep seeing a lot of Megasite in the system and almost nowhere to put it. The interesting one, though, is Morphite taking a crash. Personally, I've always found Morphite to be a very stable product, because we see Tech 2 consumption stay relatively flat, and Morphite only goes into Tech 2, and it's not and the bulk of it is consumed by things that aren't ships. So the kind of things that you see that die constantly, your guns, your missiles, your everything. And just because Zealots are hot or Ishtars are hot doesn't really move the level anywhere. I'm wondering if this might be because of other proposed changes driving speculation. With the volume up as high as it is, I think that might be what's going on. But I'm not particularly tuned in to what is the root cause of the Morphite drop. So next we'll talk about fuel. And fuel is a near and dear topic to my heart. We'll start with nitrogen. Mostly goes into high-sec POSes. And we see since the Creus change, it's just been on a straight line down. This is because the size of tower people need was cut from a large tower down to most places can get away with a small. And that means that the global fuel demand for nitrogen basically cut in a quarter. You see, though, as we get through September and October, that volumes have been a lot higher. And I think this is because people are actually coming to industry and they're finally getting their hands around it. And again, the story that it's fall and people play even the fall. I've found historically that production margins are the very best from October through the end of November. And it's been historically a place I've made a lot of money. And then Caldari fuel blocks, as we talked about nitrogen, it having a straight line down. Caldari fuel blocks in the same way have a line straight down. Not much to say about it. Again, I think that the high-sec demand for Caldari fuel is what's really going to drive things up or down. I don't expect the jump changes to impact nitrogen specifically, because nobody flies Caldari caps. They're kind of a joke. Oxygen, on the other hand, the Galleente fuel, is a little more interesting. We're seeing a lot higher. We're seeing a peak of selling, it looks like, on the 5th, and but the price has gone ahead and rebounded, staying relatively flat. Personally, I think oxygen isotopes are a thing to watch, but that's because I think that that fuel is going to become a more interesting commodity with the jump changes. But I haven't seen it yet, so I could be wrong. I'm very often wrong. Next, we talk about Galleente fuel blocks. Again, this is a spot where I sort of expected a surge to buy and a peaking out of the prices, but with the jump freighter changes, I don't think it's as dire a need to hold on to large stocks of Galleente fuel blocks. For those uninitiated, the Galleente fuel block is generally used in reaction POSes because they have the largest silos for reactors, so you have to bother them the least often. Helium isotopes are another one that should be interesting. Amar capitals are very popular. Archons are very popular. But again, we're seeing a general decline. I think it's just a state of keeping things flat. I don't think there's a ton to say on this one. Amar fuel blocks. The only thing I know about Amar fuel blocks is that most of my friends who I've had in wormhole space have their passes as a Mars. So you see some monthly bumps as resupplies come in on the weekend, which is kind of interesting. I would, if I were a trading man who came in on the weekdays, I'd be showing up on Wednesday or Thursday to buy out some and sell them on the weekend, because it looks like you can make a reasonable profit. Hydrogen isotopes, it's all Minotaur. I don't have anything interesting to say about Minotaur caps or Minotaur passes. Things are staying reasonably flat on the fuel line, but it's just, I don't know who uses them or in any amount worth writing home about. All right, on to the cool stuff. The moon products. I'm going to go ahead and focus on R32s and R64s, unless any of the low ends really flag for something, and then I'll include those in these reports in the future. My script pulls up all of them, so you can be free to check out those prices if you so wish. But for the sake of time, because I only really have 15 minutes left, I'm going to try and be brief here. So cesium I thought was interesting. It's on a rise, and it's still on a rise. I'd have to check the moon map to tell you why. It might just be hoarding, it might be demand. I don't have a good answer as to why, but the price is climbing, so past predictions, past performance guarantee future results, right? Technetium has not been king for over a year. It's been reasonably flat in periods since it lost its crown. It's not something I would speculate in, because I feel like Technetium is a reasonably stable product at this point. And this might be because backstock from the cartel days might still be washing out of the system, but that's just me speculating. Hafnium is an interesting spike. It looks like when the jump changes were announced, it just spiked out of nowhere, and again, I'd have to look at the map, and I'll have a better report for you next week, I hope, because I just didn't have time to do the extra analysis today. But it's high, and I find it interesting that, according to the bottom graph, it looks like there was a buy signal in time to actually make a buttload of money off of it. So I'm interested to see what happens. It doesn't look like it's now a time to buy, but things might change. We'll see how it goes. I kind of expect it to fall back down again. I don't know. This feels artificial, but I could be wrong. And Mercury is staying flat, so nothing to talk about for Mercury. Promethium up a little bit, not that much, a few percentage points. And dysprosium is much higher. I think this also has to do with the jump changes. People may have been speculating that to get from the far edges of Delve to bring it back to market was going to cause the price to rise. I don't know. I'm not in that market. We see that the volumes were very high at the end of September, but then fell off, so it looks speculative. Neodymium is rising. I think that would be because of, again, the jump changes, but it looks like that rise was artificial, as it's now reset back to its pre-announcement level. And Thulium is flat, so hooray. Next, we'll talk about the final Tech 2 advanced products that go into components. We'll start with the Carbonites, which go into armor plates. They're mostly go into armor plates. We see crystalline carbonite coming down. I think this is because Ishtar demand is going down. Again, I'd have to pull another graph to double check. Ferrite carbide's on the way up. Looks like something in Minotaur is popular. I'm not sure what. Titanium Carbonite staying reasonably flat, periodic, but flat. And Tungsten Carbide, which it goes into Amar ships, is really spiky for some weird reason, which makes me think somebody who's incompetent is trading it. So if you can catch them, make a bunch of money. This might be a spot to dump a bunch of buy orders into. Next are the metamaterials, where the carbides go into the low-end products, the metamaterials go into the high-end products. I believe reactors are the main thing that eats them. We're seeing again that the Galleente photonic ones are on a slight decline, though recently the price reset, so I would expect it to stay reasonably stable. The Minotaur ones coming down a little bit. It might just be oversupply. Non-linear is Caldari. You see the same spike we saw. Oh no, we didn't see a spike in Caldari. We saw a spike in Amar. Rapiers, Phyridian says. Rapiers. Maybe. They're super popular. And then here comes the Amar speculation again. Again, this spike is just, it looks speculative, and the price is resetting, but it might happen again. It looks like there's something weird happening in the Amar production market. Ionic Condensates look like somebody reset the price to try and profit. As we said before, I don't know how that actually ends up making a lot of money, but hopefully they did. Faroe Gel is staying pretty flat. That's another high-end material. Fullerite's a more lower-end material that goes into a lot of the a lot into modules and ammo is coming down. This might be driving some of the deflation in price for Tech 2 ammo. Between that and Morphite. Hypersynaptic fibers again looks like a speculative reset, and again the demand on these is reasonably low, but we should be. It looks like the new price is reasonably stable, so take that how it goes. Nanotransistors are go into a lot of the microprocessors that go into ships. This is mostly consumed by ships, and it looks like prices are coming down. That probably is a function of oversupply, people not retuning their POSes to maximize profits, is what I sort of would expect this to continue on. People may be resetting them faster than I think, though. Phenolic composites, which is one that I personally trade in because that's what we make, hit a speculative bubble but has been in decline. I sort of expect it to bottom out any day now, but again, that might be me dreaming. It looks like there's sort of a weak buy signal, but I wouldn't read too far into that. Ceramic fibers, which go into armor plates mostly, are on the rise. I think this would also go along with our Minotaur armor plates. I think is where a lot of those are going. And they're on the rise, and they keep rising. But it's a very low margin product, so it may have been overly low over the doldrums. So that's all my graphs, and I managed to do this in 50 minutes instead of 60, which is awesome. I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream, stop the recording, then restart the stream, and we'll talk about questions that you can go ahead and start asking in the chat now, and we can talk about them for the next 30 minutes, let's say.